Evening.
Evening.
How are you, Fiona?
You're on mute.
Oh, there you go. I better.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good.
I'm good, Peter. How are you?
I'm not too bad, thanks, Fiona. I'm not too bad. Evening,
Maybe-
Leanne.
Peter, I'll maybe catch up with you tomorrow about a couple of things that I wanted to ask you about.
No problem.
Hi there.
Evening, Leanne.
Hi, Leanne.
Evening. Thanks for the invitation this time. I didn't get anything last time. That's why I wasn't there. There wasn't any link sent to me at all.
Oh no.
That's all right. Got it this time.
We'll make sure that doesn't happen again.
It's all right. I just said this time, make sure I get it. And I got it.
Hi, Michelle.
Helps if you're not muted.
You'd think we would have learned by now. It's only been 2 years.
Hi Ross. I've put it in the chat bar, but just a wee reminder that we are being live streamed.
Is it started?
5 minutes.
I know, but I didn't want to be trying to live stream at the same time as having to talk around, so I thought I'll just start the live stream.
Okay. Noted. Best behaviour. Leanne, just for info, I've got Maddie's presentation. I'll be sharing it when we come to that point.
Great. Thanks, Ross.
Hi, Aisha.
Hiya. How's
Hi,
things?
Aisha.
Hiya.
Evening, Susan. Good to see you.
Hi. I can't see her. Hello again, Aggie. Doesn't seem any time at all since I saw you last.
Hello, no, all of 10 minutes.
Evening everyone, so that's just about 6:30. I think we might get started. And anyone that's coming on a wee bit later can just join us. So for anyone who doesn't know me, I'm sure it can't be that many of you. My name is Fiona McCabe. I work for two local charities, Community Action Youth Hill and Fulham. And as we discussed before, Aisha and I will be co-chairing these meetings on an alternating basis. So have the pleasure of me this time. Just a reminder as well before we start that the meeting is being live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel, so best behaviour, please, if you don't mind. I think that's us ready to go. So is there any apologies that we need to know about?
I'll come
Chair,
in
I've
there.
just noted a few in the chat bar there. We've got
Oh.
Councillor Olivia Carson, we've got Jim Dobby from the Tenants Federation and Graham McLaughlin from Police Scotland, but Inspector Alan Mulholland's expected to cover for him.
All right,
If
smashing.
there's any others, that's all that I've received.
Just one further one I was going to add as well, Chair. Don Middleton from Motherwell Football Community Trust can't make it tonight either.
Okay, no worries, thank you. All right, so let's get powering through. Next agenda items, the minutes of the previous meeting and any matters arising. So I think everyone's had the minutes from the last meeting circulated along with the rest of the papers for tonight's meeting. Does anyone, I'm just having a wee look at the minutes here, does anyone have any amendments or matters arising that they want to discuss from the meeting minutes from the last round? We'll take that as a no. That's great, thanks everyone. And as I've just mentioned, Aisha and I will rotate the chairing of this meeting, but there'll always be one of us, so that's good news. So I think we can get just started ploughing through the General Community Board business and updates. So the next item is an update from Pamela Humphreys as a community champion. Pamela?
Thanks, Chair, and good evening, everyone. I'm glad to be back from our second Community Board meeting as the Motherwell Community Champion. So don't really have too much to say in terms of update because I'm conscious that you've got quite a lengthy agenda tonight, and I'm looking forward to hearing all the other updates. But I think at the last meeting, which was obviously my first meeting, I tried to give a bit of an update or overview in terms of what the role was envisaged for the community champion. Obviously, I think I said then, and sort of say it again, that it is a sort of evolving and developing role, but in an attempt, I think, to try and articulate what some of the aims and objectives were, they were circulated, I think, to all of the community board members back at the end of July, and comments were invited in terms of the draft. So maybe just to thank anybody who contributed to that, and some quite a lot of comments were received. Overall, I think it was positively received, and I don't think there's any particular changes envisaged to the draft that was previously circulated. So I think we're happy to move forward on that basis, but as I say, it is an evolving and developing role. So I thought maybe to that end it might be helpful for myself if I could maybe meet with the community reps and from Motherwell community area, maybe in advance of the next community board meeting, if people would find that helpful, because it would certainly be I think helpful to me to sort of get that local perspective and get input from the local community reps in terms of what are some of the kind of particular issues and priorities that they have in the Motherwell area that they would want me to be aware of. So I'll maybe ask Ross if that's possible to maybe try and coordinate that for anybody who would be interested. Ideally, it might even be face-to-face, you never know, depending on obviously how things develop and how people feel about that. So obviously that I'd be keen to do that and see where that takes us from there. In terms of other updates, probably most people on the call be aware, but just in case anybody is not aware, as I think everybody knows, the council's been involved in quite extensive consultation over the summer period around the town visions for each of our towns, and town hub proposals as well, and also particularly relevant for Motherwell is the proposals around Strathclyde Park and the sort of wider master plan for community parks. So the intention is that we will be reporting back to the Policy and Strategy Committee in September. So we obviously would want to make people aware of that, and that certainly in terms of the town visions and the hubs, as I suppose the start of a process, certainly not the end of a process, in terms of how do we take those areas forward, and indeed the parks master plan. So maybe be happy to talk about that at a future meeting, but just to make sure everybody was aware of that. So I think apart from that, Chair, I've nothing else to add unless anybody's got any questions or any points that they want to raise. I suppose it might be worth I think one of the issues that was highlighted in the feedback was around the issue about consistency and making sure that there is consistency across the community boards and the community champions as well. So it's just to advise everybody that the intention is that the community champions will meet. So, you know, we obviously will meet as a group, as a collective, after the community board cycle, and just to make sure that we are feeding back and making sure that we're ensuring that consistency in terms of the approach for the community champion role going forward. So I think probably that's about enough for me, and the same, I'm happy to take any questions or to pick up any points if anybody wants to contact me out with the meeting, and say perhaps Ross would be kind enough to put the offer out if and we could arrange that meeting at some point. Thanks.
That's great, Pamela. Thank you very much. Anyone, any questions for Pamela just now? Nope. I'm sure we'll come to you, Pamela, at some point. Loads of questions for you. That's great, thank you. So next on the agenda is Maddie Halliday from Vanel with an update or a presentation on action on climate together. And I think, Ross, you've got the presentation. Is that what you said?
Thanks, Ross. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Nice to be here. Thank you for having me on the agenda. I'm speaking actually, although I'm CEO of Voluntary Action North Lanarkshire, I'm actually speaking on behalf of NLP Partnership. Action on Climate Together is an NLP initiative, and the Strategic Leadership Board had agreed that the climate emergency was one of its top 3 priorities. I think you'll probably all agree it's a top priority for everybody. And I'm going to do a short presentation today. I've got a couple of slides that are just reminding us about what climate change, global warming, the climate emergency is. Many of you will be familiar with it, perhaps some of you less so. I'm not going to go into too much detail about that. The slides with notes will be circulated to you with the minutes of the meeting, and also there's a website with a briefing paper and lots of resources so that people can familiarise themselves with those issues to the extent they wish to. And then I'm going to briefly introduce Act Now, and again I won't go into too much detail given time is short at this meeting with lots of agenda items, but again the detail of the Act Now initiative, including the action plan, is available on the website. I'm going to focus towards the end of the presentation, the main focus that I'm going to have is on building community capacity for community climate action. So that's really an introduction. Could I just have the next slide, please, Ross? Thank you. And so that was the presentation overview that I just gave you. It's those 2 parts, and the next bit is going to be on the climate emergency. So this diagram, which is a thermometer, looks complicated, but it's a climate action tracker. It's looking at global temperature increases by 2100 and the warming projections. It's quite a frightening diagram once you get to grips with it. It shows you at the arrow in the middle, that big dark arrow in the middle, we are here in 2020, not quite 2021, where we've already had 1.2% centigrade global warming due to emissions of carbon and other greenhouse gases. You probably have all heard of the Paris Agreement in 2015, which committed governments across the world to a 1.5% increase as a maximum. This is the increase at which the worst impacts of climate change would be avoided. I say the worst because, as you probably know and can observe, we already have climate change with us with quite severe impacts already at 1.2 increase. If you look at the existing pledges and targets across the world about where we currently are aiming for, the frightening thing is that we're aiming for over 3%. So as you all know, COP26 in Glasgow is intended to ratify commitment to the Paris Agreement, but most importantly, actually secure commitment to deliver it against 1.5. Could I have the next slide, please? So this really is a simple diagram which just shows you how global warming occurs. It's often referred to as the greenhouse effect. So as the sun's heat reaches the planet, we also produce heat from our activities it should be released, excess heat released into the atmosphere and dissipated. But when we release too much carbon dioxide or other greenhouse gases such as methane, it creates these clouds or blankets that prevents that heat being released. And this is our problem. We're producing, through our human activities, we're producing so much of these greenhouse gases that heat is not being released into the atmosphere and beyond Earth, and we are warming up the planet. Could I have the next slide, please? And I think these frightening images are ones that many of you will have seen on the news. We could show images in Scotland, which does have climate change impacts already, including flooding and warmer weather. The Director of Public Health for NHS Lanarkshire, in their annual report in 2018, confirmed that the climate emergency is the greatest threat to public health. So just because some of these worst impacts are happening outside of Scotland and the UK, we have already had and will have further impacts. So we've seen flooding recently across Europe, fires, and also now fires in Siberia are reaching the North Pole. So we're already seeing the ice melting rapidly. Could I have the next slide, please? So this may seem quite frightening, but I think it's important to say that action is being taken, obviously at governmental level, perhaps not yet at the pace required, but also at local level. I think we've all seen the amazing action taken by young people to demand really that governments globally act now. They don't use that phrase, but we do. And also initiatives at community level, community energy schemes, rewilding, community gardens and woodlands. So there's a lot we can do. And also the UK panel on climate change has advised that at least 50% of the change that we need to see has to be coming from changes in individual behaviours and community action. Of course, government, businesses and the statutory sector have to do a great deal, but so do we, and so can we. Could I have the next slide, please? So moving on to Act Now, which is why we set it up, because of this challenge. I'm going to just summarise the initiative and then move on to looking at community climate action and what we can and might do, building on what already is happening at community level in North Lanarkshire. Could I have the next slide, please? So, as you know, NLP is a partnership initiative of statutory organisations, and also VANAL is a partner on behalf of the community and voluntary sector. And the Community and Voluntary Sector Partnership Group has a chair, which is actually Aisha, and they're on the chair of that group is on the Strategic Leadership Board. And the partnership consulted on a draft Act Now plan last autumn. It did come to community boards. I have to say I was a little disappointed we didn't get a very significant response to the draft plan from community boards, and this presentation is really a second opportunity to invite you to engage and support further action. The aims and objectives and the principles of the Act Now plan are summarised in this slide. I'm not going to speak to them. The key thing, though, is to emphasise that Act Now isn't happening in isolation as a separate strand of work. It needs to be embedded in everything we do to support environmentally, socially and economically sustainable recovery from COVID. And it will also help us tackle a whole range of other challenges that we have, including creating jobs and supporting community cohesion, greening initiatives, improving mental and physical well-being, and so on. Could I have the next slide, please? So in terms of delivery of the Act Now plan, the public sector, as many of you might know, already have a legal duty to achieve net zero by 2045. North Lanarkshire Council declared a climate emergency in 2019 and committed to achieving net zero by 2030, 15 years ahead of government target. Ambitious, but I believe doable, and they're making great progress. And I think their ambition indeed is that the whole of North Lanarkshire could contribute to achieving net zero ahead of 2045. It's not just the council, NHS Lanarkshire is doing a huge amount as well in relation to achieving net zero. Police and fire also are part of national initiatives for their organisations, Police Scotland and Fire and Rescue Scotland. So they're already on track. the business sector in North Lanarkshire has responsibilities around net zero but needs further support, and the enterprise team in the council is organising a climate event on the 22nd of September, and they will be exploring with the business sector. There's already great examples in North Lanarkshire good practice, but not enough. They'll be exploring with them what more they can do, and Act Now will be launched to that sector as well at that event. So residents and community voluntary sector are the focus of today and other work that we wish to discuss and explore and support you to deliver. Individuals, families, and also community organisations can come together to support each other to contribute to action on climate. And I'm going to say a little bit more about that in the next slide, which you might be glad to know is approaching the end of my presentation. But we also have a cross-sector Act Now coordinating group that reports into the SLB, which I convene and chair with support from a project assistant. The members of that group are all the partner organisations, 2 youth climate ambassadors from North Lanarkshire who are fantastic and are part of a bigger group, and also a representative from the community and voluntary sector, biodiversity and climate emergency network. Could I have the next slide, please, Ross? So the key issues here, looking at what residents and the community and voluntary sector can do, is really around how do we build community capacity. So, for example, we could have local Act Now champions. They could be within organisations, they could be volunteers. I'm quite keen to explore forming in each of the 9 localities Act Now groups where local people come together, residents, community and voluntary sector, to identify and agree what actions they want to take for their community, what are their priorities and what help they need to take that forward. We already have a whole network of eco schools. All primary schools are eco schools, some of our secondary schools. They're not all fully accredited, but they form a great basis as well for community action. Our children and young people are often very well informed around these issues, perhaps more than some of us. So we need to link up our eco schools as well with wider community action. So a really important thing for community-based action is raising awareness. Awareness has increased considerably in recent years, but when I started in post only, well, I suppose 3 years ago in November, there wasn't as much awareness in my experience of this issue as there clearly is around a lot of other issues, such as rightly tackling poverty, digital inclusion. So we do still have a way to go for people to understand the issues, but we also need to support people to take community action and, of course, where they can, individual action. But my focus today is on sort of collective community climate action. Fanal is going to be working with the Biodiversity and Climate Emergency Network, is working indeed with them to support community and voluntary sector organisations to achieve net zero. We were going to be producing a local guide. It turns out that SCVO was also planning something similar, so we're going to be working with them so that we join forces, and that will actually help organisations on their journey to net zero. Could I have the next slide, please? So what are the kind of things that we are already doing in North Lanarkshire, residents and community and voluntary sector? Already, many are raising their voice to raise awareness amongst their colleagues, their families, in their community, and also to advocate for action. And we do have some renewable energy schemes in North Lanarkshire, several run by the council, some by a few farms and one by a business, but we don't have, as far as I can see, based on the the Scotland Community Energy Scheme website, I can't see any that are community-led. This is a possibility for community organisations. There's funding streams there. We do have progress in some of our communities around development of community woodlands and green spaces. The council is reviewing its green spaces. It's got its park strategy. We've got Clyde Climate Forest. We've got an initiative called the Queen's Canopy. But what can we do at community level? How can we build on good practice here and have community-run initiatives which not only provide green space, they can absorb over time, quite a long time, carbon, but also they provide good spaces for leisure and activities for people that they enjoy. a number of the community and voluntary sector already support what we might call green travel with walking, cycling. I know, for example, that in Shotts they've raised money to buy electric minibuses. So there's opportunities here at community level as well. I've mentioned community gardens, but actually there's also a need to look at how we support people to eat less meat and more plants, because meat production is one of the biggest causes of carbon emissions on the planet. And the more that we eat, the more plants we eat, then we're all contributing to reductions in climate emissions. Also, looking at how we share and upcycle things to reduce waste, to reduce production of more things that we don't need. We did have in Cumbernauld a social enterprise that was a tool library. Really good idea, very successful in other places, sadly didn't take off in Cumbernauld. Is there more that we can do across North Lanarkshire? So these are just some thoughts, and I'd be really interested to get your views. We're having a community launch event on the 29th of September, excuse me, where there will be 9 locality workshops where residents and CVS reps can come together for their locality and talk in a little bit more depth than we've got time tonight about the things that they want to do locally, and also whether and how they want to form a local Act Now group. And Vanel and council colleagues and health improvement colleagues will, if there's motivation and interest in setting those up, we'll provide support, including helping raise money so that these groups have resources. Could I have the last slide, please? So if you want to find out more, there's an Act Now website, and that includes the plan and the briefing paper, a range of resources. We've already got case studies on climate action in North Lanarkshire from all sectors, the council, community and voluntary sector. And also we launched the first of our monthly e-bulletins on Act Now in August, and you can subscribe to that. Thank you very much for your time, and I'm happy if there's any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Maddie. That was good. I had a couple of questions just quickly. If anyone, individuals from the community or members of the voluntary sector are interested in becoming Act Now champions, what's the best way to do that?
Well, in the first instance, to contact, there's an email address on the slide, but I'll put another one in chat. 1 minute. Where's chat gone? I can't see. Oh, there it is. Sorry. Just in the first instance, contact me and we'll respond. My colleague Munro, who I think is here, Munro is here. He's our Act Now project assistant. He will also then respond and provide support and guidance. As you probably know, Vanel also supports volunteering generally, so we would explore with people how they want to take that on. What I'm hoping is it could tie into the formation of local groups and people could support work at local level, but they could also get involved at NL-wide level. For example, we've got 2 young people who are climate ambassadors for North Lanarkshire on the Act Now coordinating group.
Great. Thank you, Maddie. Any questions from anyone else? Councillor Weir? Councillor Weir, go ahead.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you there.
That's
Can
okay.
I ask, Maddie, how much do you think that leaving car engines and bus engines running contributes to climate change?
Oh, you mean idling engines?
Yes.
Yeah, well, I think I can't give you an answer to how much. I bet you there's information on how much it does. But just an interesting observation. 40 years ago, I used to visit Germany regularly, and actually it was illegal to idle your engine in Germany then. And yet I don't observe that that's something that's required here. And I still see a lot of people running their engines when they don't need to. So obviously it will contribute, because if you're not driving your car, then even actually, you'll notice with newer models that when you're paused at the lights, that the engine actually cuts out, but you're not turned off. But with older cars, that doesn't happen. So it's already been designed into newer cars. But I do think there's a sort of awareness and behavioural shift that we need to encourage, and possibly regulation might help. But of course, you couldn't probably monitor it. So yes, it's a good point. Thank you.
I think regulation definitely would help because the buses are the worst for it.
Yes, and of
you
course,
can't tell them they're not
you can't-
interested.
they're not interested. But interestingly, of course, as we move towards electric buses, because eventually there will be no diesel, no petrol, anything, the target is, actually, I should know this off by heart, but I don't. I think it's 20... Munro, are you there? Can you help me? What's the date for replacement of, I'll put you in the spot instead. There is a date anyway for phasing out of all petrol and diesel engines. And so then it won't be an issue. But meanwhile, you're absolutely right, it is, Anne.
Thank you both. Any other questions or comments for Maddie before we move on? No, I don't see any. Maddie, thanks for that presentation and thank you for sending your email address in the chat. That's super useful. I'm sure we'll be in touch
And one
shortly.
last thing is I've asked colleagues in the council's communities team to send the invitation to the community event on the 29th of September. So I'm hoping all community board members will have received that, and I hope to see some or many of you at that event. Thank you.
Thanks, Maddie. All right, next on the agenda is Lynn Gow, providing an update on delivering digital locally. Lynn, over to you.
Thanks, Chair. This is the fifth night I've done this, and every single night it says delivering digital locally, and I keep meaning to say it's driving digital locally.
Oh.
But anyway, thanks very much for having me along. Good evening, everyone. My name is Lynn Gow, and I am the Communication and Engagement Lead for the Council's Digital NL project. You might remember I came along back in March, and I think it was my 5th day in the job to provide an update on digital NL. So just going to today provide you a bit of an update on where I am with the driving digital locally. So through the Digital NL programme, the Council aims to provide online anytime services which meets the needs of our residents. However, we really need to understand what the needs are, and as such, we've launched Driving Digital Locally framework. So I just wanted to update the board tonight on where I am with that engagement. You might or you might not recall at the end of my previous presentation back in March, I offered, my ask was to offer volunteers the opportunity to join a digital subgroup. Now, the purpose of that group was to maximise the use of digital services for our communities across North Lanarkshire and to try to drive effective collaboration and engagement within these communities to develop the Driving Digital Locally framework. I'm quite glad to say that we did receive a good number of volunteers. So the group's made up of representatives from across all 9 board areas, and we meet on a monthly basis. So the initial meeting took place on the 12th of August and was chaired by Councillor Duffy in his role as convener of the Transformation and Digitisation Committee. I developed a draft terms of reference and it was approved at our own Digital North Lanarkshire Delivery Board back in June. So I presented the terms of reference to the first digital subgroup and a few wee amendments, and we'll resubmit it back to the meeting for final approval. We also agreed a rolling chair and vice chair for future meetings, and further discussion, we split the group up into 3 groups, and there was discussion during these breakout sessions that focused on supporting early action to achieve a better understanding of what digital inclusion meant for our 9 communities and across the equalities group. And we also looked at ongoing action to support the local work of the LOIPs. Since the meeting, we've done a bit of a mapping exercise to make sure that we've got the right representation across all areas in the group. So we've agreed 2 reps from each community board, and if anybody would like to join, please just get in touch. The role of the member will be to act as an ambassador in your own area. And as that progresses, I'll keep the board up to date. Also in June, I just wanted to update you on a digital inclusion seminar that I attended. It was hosted by the Digital North Lanarkshire Partnership, and it was chaired by the Council's Chief Executive, Desiree. It was aimed at those in the partnership and other organisations to explore how we can all work together to effectively increase digital inclusion and also to reaffirm the commitment to the Digital North Lanarkshire Partnership. We split the delegates into workshops. to discuss key actions that we need to take in North Lanarkshire, across North Lanarkshire to accelerate digital inclusion. The final report isn't published yet, so I think it's due in a couple of weeks, but early overarching themes that were identified in each of the groups were increased knowledge of digital skills needs amongst the communities, and a digital action plan was suggested and discussed in one of the groups. Increased investment, especially around infrastructure, and also better collaboration amongst our partner organisations. So these are all key actions which the Digital North Lanarkshire Partnership will be taking forward. And also I have been working on how we can engage better with our elected members to try and gain a better understanding on what their thoughts are around digital inclusion, especially in their own constituencies. So I discussed it with our convener, and we have developed a bit of a survey. It's out just now, and then once this survey is complete, we'll create some focus groups and how to discuss how these findings can be fed into the Driving Digital Locally framework. And just finally, you'll be pleased to know, I just wanted to update you on a new project that I'm working with that I'm actually really excited about. It's targeting our older residents in our community and our retirement complexes to help them to get online and to adopt new technologies to help them with their loneliness and improve their overall happiness and well-being. It's going to be funded through Connecting Scotland, and I'm delighted to say that just this week we've been successful in gaining 200 devices and MiFi boxes to help support these residents. We're going to be tying it in with the council's own digital champions to support these elderly, and also working with colleagues in education to try to develop an intergenerational project. So I'm really delighted to say that it's going in the right direction. And if anybody wants to discuss anything further, I'm happy to pop my email in the chat bar because I know how busy the agenda is tonight. Thanks very much for listening.
Great, thanks, Lynn. Any questions or comments for Lynn? Nope. Lynn, if you wouldn't mind putting your email address in the chat, that would be great. Thank you very much. Thanks. Okay, moving swiftly on, we have got Margaret Kelly with providing an update on the housing strategy. Margaret, over to you.
Thanks, Chair. I'll just share the presentation just now. Okay, thanks everyone for the opportunity to come here tonight and give you a very brief update on where we are with the new draft consultative local housing strategy. The presentation tonight will consist of a brief bit of background, what we are trying to achieve in terms of the key priorities and actions we've set out, some of our next steps, and then hopefully some time for discussion thereafter. So in terms of some background, the local housing strategy is an all 10-year document, and it is the main overarching housing plan for North Lanarkshire, and it spans a 5-year period. To develop the draft local housing strategy, we carried out a review of local and national evidence to identify the key housing challenges and issues in North Lanarkshire, and we're also in the process currently of carrying out a refreshed housing need and demand assessment, and that helps us identify how much housing we need across tenures. We carried out a comprehensive range of consultation in phase 1 to develop the draft strategy, and we had a really positive response with over 1,000 people sharing their views in terms of what their housing priorities and key housing issues were. And you may recall that we presented some of the key emerging housing issues and challenges last November to the community boards, and the feedback we received was considered alongside all the other feedback we got in phase 1 and the evidence to develop the draft strategy, which you see just now and was published in June earlier this year. So what are we trying to achieve? Our vision set out in the new draft strategy is to make North Lanarkshire the place to live through the provision of high quality housing and support in sustainable communities that enables people to thrive and prosper. So this vision is underpinned by 7 strategic housing outcomes, and they each cover the key priority housing areas of housing delivery, sustainable communities, tackling homelessness, supporting and promoting independent living, health and well-being, climate change and fuel poverty, improving house condition, and also contributing to improving the quality and standards and accessibility in the private rented sector. So in terms of what we want to do, we want to ultimately meet housing needs so that everyone has access to a home that is affordable and meets their individual needs in a place that they want to stay. So we will deliver and increase access to a broader range of housing tenures and develop a self-build register, and we will consider ways in which we can use planning policy and land to support this. We will continue to deliver high quality new affordable homes, and many of you might know, but we already have one of the most ambitious council new build programmes in Scotland, with 5,000 new council homes planned for delivery by 2035, and we have 3,000 affordable homes, both registered social landlord and council, planned over the next 5 years. Within this, we will increase our provision of wheelchair and accessible homes, and we will also work with private developers to increase the number of wheelchair homes in the private sector. To help us increase our supply, we will look at expanding the use of off-the-shelf purchases, but also propose to expand open market purchase and increase supply this way, because that also helps us address issues such as long-term empty properties and helps enable common works to be progressed in mixed tenure blocks. And in our collaborative efforts with our partners to tackle homelessness, we will improve access to permanent housing, reduce time spent in temporary accommodation, and provide wraparound support for people with complex needs. In terms of sustainable communities, we recognise that in order for communities to thrive, homes and places need to work in tandem, and our actions focus on delivering more for new and existing communities through supporting the delivery of homes in our town centres and progressing our tower reprovisioning programme. And by working with our partners and other services, we will locate homes closer to services, facilities and transport links so that homes are well connected and support wellbeing. In terms of house condition, we also want to ensure homes are high quality and are also energy efficient. So we will continue to implement energy efficiency improvements in our own housing stock to reduce our carbon emissions and work towards the Council's net zero target by 2030. This involves improving access to information and advice and implementing the range of actions set out in the Council's Housing Asset Management Plan to improve the standard and quality of our homes. For the private sector, we will work with owner-occupiers and private landlords to improve compliance, but also to look at ways in which we can help support owners and private landlords address disrepair and maintenance and take preparatory actions ahead of new energy efficiency regulations coming into force. The next steps, our consultation officially closes today. However, because we're carrying out this phase of community board meetings, we will keep the survey and the consultation open to the 6th of September for the last committee board meeting. We will use all the feedback in this phase 2 of the consultation process to inform the finalised local housing strategy. We then anticipate to seek committee approval later this year with adoption late in 2021. A few links for you. This is where you can view the strategy on the Council's website, a link to the online survey if you've not had the opportunity to complete it so far, or if you prefer to send feedback directly to us at this email address, it's there for you as well. And that's the end of my presentation, Chair. So thanks so much for listening, and thanks for all the feedback and contributions we've had so far in developing the draft strategy.
Thanks, Margaret. Any questions or comments just now for Margaret? Nope, getting off lightly, Margaret. Thank you for that. All right, let's move on. Next on the agenda is Leanne Pollock with Communities Flexible Funding. Leanne.
Thanks, Chair. So this report, the report's been circulated, so I'll not spend a lot of time talking about it tonight. I'll just give you a brief overview. I'm happy to take any comments or questions. This report is to provides an update based on the previous report that came at the last cycle of community board meetings. It demonstrates how the additional funding that came through the flexible funding programme was used to support and deliver activity across a wide range of services and priority areas. That funding sort of came from government to support local communities in action that was required to support work around the response and recovery initially to COVID-19, and now starting to kind of support communities, I suppose, out of COVID-19 as we start to recover. So the report, the specific areas to highlight is some of the work that's been undertaken across the communities team with community learning and development and by the financial inclusion team within the council, working with voluntary sector organisations. Appendix 1 shows how the funding, the sustainability fund that was available for community groups awarded earlier this year was used. And we're now just going through a kind of further round of funding to support digital inclusion. So local community groups and organisations have been able to apply for up to £1,000 for equipment to tackle digital inclusion, and to make sure to support that there's also a kind of training and support package being put in place. The application scoring that will be used is similar to what was used around the kind of earlier sustainability fund. And the recommendation tonight is just that the community board note that the arrangements that have been implemented to date to utilise the flexible fund and moving forward the tackling insecurity fund. And I'm happy to take any comments or questions around the specifics, and I've got some colleagues from the Motherwell area who would be able to pick up on some of the specifics as well if there's any more detailed questions, but happy to pick up on questions around the kind of process and procedures and the work that's been undertaken to date or indeed moving forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Leanne. Any questions or comments for Leanne on that? I don't see anyone, Leanne. That's good. Okay. Leanne, you're up next again with the community partnership updates on board development sessions.
Yeah, so we've got a couple of updates just to give under this section, and I'll be very brief with them because obviously we want to get to the part that's most important, where we want the community reps to be able to input and raise issues. So I'll go through these updates quite quickly. So the first update, as you said, Chair, was around the community board development programme. So you'll recall at the previous community board meeting, an update was provided on the work that's underway to develop a kind of the training and development programme for the community boards across North Lanarkshire. Since that kind of update, there has been a training needs analysis sent out to 288 community board reps. That was sent on the 8th of July with a closing date of the 18th of August. There was a 25% response rate to that training needs analysis, and I'll just give you a kind of overview of some of the key areas, because obviously the community boards through that training needs analysis were presented with a number of kind of key themes and issues and asked to rate them in terms of importance to them, or where they felt that they needed further development, and they were also asked to highlight kind of issues that they felt that they would want to cover. So in terms of the priorities identified from the options that were given, some of the kind of key areas were around community asset transfer and community ownership, and a better understanding of that, a better understanding of the local development programme and the funding and you know the kind of process and how communities can influence, a better understanding of participatory budgeting and you know what's required in terms of the mainstreaming approach and the different approaches that might be available, a greater understanding of the council and community planning partners budgeting processes. And there was a specific focus identified around partnership working. The other suggestions that came in, where there was a kind of open question where participants were asked to highlight what they felt they needed to do more on. So one of them was around managing conflict, and particular reference was made to managing conflict where I suppose officers and communities don't agree, and how do we kind of reach that resolution, balancing community need where there's maybe a difference of opinion within the community or the community reps, and where no consensus can be reached. Making sure, and I think this is really encouraging, community board reps were really keen to look at how we reach out to those who are a bit more difficult to engage or who maybe wouldn't necessarily automatically come along to community board meetings, so those who are more difficult to reach and engage. And looking at methods and making sure that they were inclusive. Effective minute taking came up, and also the kind of final one was around contacts and networks and kind of widening the membership and the network that sits around the community board. So over the next few weeks, myself and my colleague Matt Costello will be doing a bit of work with our talent and organisational development team within the council to start to plan some approaches and kind of I suppose a kind of programme. We'll be working with the community champions across North Lanarkshire and all looking at how we kind of plan and programme in this work to make sure that the community boards are getting as much support as they can to develop as individual kind of groups, but also to develop collectively. So happy to take any comments or questions on that before we move on to the next update.
Thanks, Leanne. Anything from anyone? Aisha, go ahead.
Leanne, it was just a quick question on the 25% uptake. Do you know what percentage were actually community members that responded?
Aisha, I can find that out and come back to you really over the next few days, if that's okay. I'm sure we did have the information, but I just don't have it to hand right now. So can I come back to you with that? We actually did extend the date as well to try and encourage, and we did that more a kind of push through our local officers to try and get more people to participate. But obviously, you know, people are busy and there's a lot going on just now. But I'll find that out for you, Aisha, and come back.
Yeah, I'd be interested just to see what the uptake is by community members, you know, and if there's been a larger number of maybe council officers completing it rather than it being community. So that would be interesting to see that. Thanks.
Thanks. I suppose the one thing that I would say is it shouldn't necessarily have gone to council officers, it would have gone to community board members, which will be some officers, but technically kind of council officers are other than the community champions are not considered community board members, but there are obviously representatives of police, fire, etc., who are considered community board members and elected members. So we can certainly get that breakdown for you in terms of the number that were maybe elected members and from partner agencies. We'll certainly get that to you, Aisha. I'll note that down and get it to you as quickly as I can.
Great, thanks, Leanne. Anyone else before we move on to the next one? No, Leanne, you're up again on the LDP.
I know, sorry, you'll be fed up listening to me, but they are important updates that we do need to bring to the community board. So the next update that we've got is around the local development programme. This report really just provides an update with delivery of the local development programme for the current period. The report provides an overview of the local development programme process and the criteria and an update on delivery progress for the current project. Appendix 1 provides progress against the 2020-21 projects that are currently being delivered. And there is info available on the future projects in Appendix 2. The figures in Appendix 2, I just want to highlight, are indicative and notional at this stage, and no specific budget has been allocated. You'll recall at the last community board cycle, each board approved in principle projects to be prioritised for delivery, depending on budget, feasibility and local support. So at this point in time, those really, at that time, they really were just ideas, but they were approved pending further work to look at the availability, budget, feasibility and local support, or if a budget cut becomes available. So the prioritisation work has now been undertaken by the team. And that's shown. So if you look at Appendix 2, it shows the kind of prioritisation. And as we say, that can be due to a number of factors. It can be around, it may be about availability of budget. You know, if budget becomes available, it may be that it's a project that's quite easily delivered when the budget becomes available. Or it might be that there's a project that there's really strong community support and need for. So obviously the prioritisation based on that may change depending on the circumstances. The proposal forums have been completed retrospectively for all of the projects that have been approved, and where feasibility has identified that a project is not feasible, the recommendation is that those projects are deleted from the current list. So the recommendations are really just to note the progress we delivered in the current projects in Appendix 1, to approve any projects with potential for delivery in future years pending a budget and community support, and to note the capital budget allocated for the next 5 years in Appendix 3. And I'm happy to take any comments or questions for any of the projects, and obviously we've got Ross and Peter on the call who are probably a bit more familiar with the local projects as well and working with communities on those. So happy to take any comments or questions again at this point.
Chair, could I just come in as well, just to add a wee thing to Leanne's comments? Thanks, Chair. It was just to point out, someone had asked us, the project budgets that we show on the reports, that's the LDP contribution to a budget. So, for example, in Appendix 1, where it says Brannock High School Mugger, project budget 80,000, that's actually the local development contribution to that project. That project, for example, came in at £160,000, but we used the local development project to lever in additional funding from other council services. Another example would be in Appendix 2, we've got for delivery this year, George Street Play Area. It's got there as the potential cost £40,000. That play area will actually be in the region of £100,000. But what's happened is the community have worked very closely and very hard to lever in external funding on the basis of having this LDP contribution. So it's just to make the community board aware that although these values are shown there and we're kind of given notional cost to everything, quite often there's a lot of additional funding that we're pulling into that to increase the value of what's been spent in the Motherwell area. And if people need further details on any of that, we're happy to provide it. And I had one additional project, it's actually come up and it's on our holding list, but it got added after this report had been produced, so it's not on there just now, but I would like to just put it forward to the board, hopefully for approval in principle, and it's to carry out refurbishment or replacement works as required on the Spanish Civil War Memorial in the Duchess of Hamilton Park. Board members may be aware, and I believe Councillor O'Rourke's on our call, and I'll bring him in just after this, they may be aware that it's suffered a couple of vandalism attacks, the memorial, over the past few months. There has been, from what we can gather, some permanent damage carried to it, and the proposal is that we would put that forward no earlier than year 2 to look at potential refurbishment work or any additional works required to bring that back to a suitable memorial standard. So that's a new holding list project, and if the board were in agreement, I'll have that added to the list as approved in principle, subject to further work being carried out on the feasibility of it.
Thanks, Ross. Councillor O'Rourke, did you want to add anything to that?
No, Fiona, I agree that with Ross there that it should be done. I missed the start of your what you were saying, Ross, but did you mention about CCTV?
I didn't, Councillor O'Rourke, just to update the board. We're also looking at installing CCTV in the vicinity of Duchess of Hamilton Park, due to obviously the costs incurred with vandalism, but also there has been wider issues raised about potentially safety and different antisocial behaviour in the park area. CCTV, however, we already have a budget allocation within the local development programme. You'll be aware that that's shown there for each year. So any costs incurred would come off that. And for operational reasons, we won't always bring CCTV projects to the community board prior to us taking them forward, because we do have to have the ability to be sort of reactive and responsive when required. So the CCTV regarding the memorial, we'll look at the best option to meet the needs of that area, and we'll progress that with our CCTV team. But any spend on that will be reported to a future board.
Okay, thanks, Ross. I would ask the board to consider backing this. Thank you.
Thanks both. So can I just ask if the board could approve to add this particular project to the LDP holding list for year 2? Thumbs up or thumbs down is okay. There you are. Thanks everyone. All right, Ross and Peter, you guys are up next with the local outcome improvement plan update.
You get to your double act point of the evening, so he's a little bit happy. I'll just give you a quick intro of where we're at, and then I'll bring Peter in to kind of put a bit of meat on the bones. So as you're aware, we've been developing the local outcome improvement plan over the last few months. The plans are now sitting with our graphics team, basically having the final sort of proofreading done, checking all the hyperlinks are working and everything else. We're hopefully going to be in a position to share them with the community board within a few weeks and be ready for publish to the community board's site of them. You'll be aware as well, under the LOIP development, we identified priorities for the Motherwell area in the next month or so to add up the subgroups for each of the priorities. Peter can talk a bit about that. And we're also looking at developing some place-based plans that also support LOIP, because we identified 4 priority localities for the Motherwell Community Board area. And it's our intention for this year and next year to develop a specific place-based action plan for each priority locality that also ties into the LUMs. Peter, can I bring you in just to speak a little bit about and starting them up?
Thanks, Ross. Can people hear me okay? I'm getting a bit of feedback when you were talking there, Ross, but it's possibly at my side. Yeah, just to add to what Ross said there, as you know, we identified quite a number of priorities, including mental health and digital inclusion. And I just wanted to touch on the mental health plan in terms of where we're at in Motherwell. As you know, we've been doing some work with the Motherwell Health and Social Care Consortium with a couple of local groups, including the YAMS Mental Health Hub and the Full On project. I wanted to flag up YAMS in particular, first of all, as we're doing some exciting work with the libraries, in particular Newart Hill Library, for YAMS to co-locate within the library to provide centre-based activity to support people with mental health issues. And I'm glad to say Motherwell Health and Social Care Consortium have provided £5,000 towards that project. And some of the members that are on the community board are also members of the consortium. So we can start to see how some of the work starting to join up very nicely around the themes that local people have identified. And also one of the projects the consortium's funded is the Full On project. That is one of the 2 groups Fiona works with. And they're going to be also funded to the tune of £5,000 to carry out some outreach work in Motherwell. So around mental health, we've got a couple of exciting projects, both centre-based and outreach. And also our colleagues at the NHS Health Improvement Team are starting a mapping exercise, which was part of the Mental Health Action Plan. And they're starting to look at some of the activities already going on, so we can see what's there already, identify gaps, and then come back and consult with the community board about where we can look at provision and providing some activities in areas where maybe there's not so much just now. And I just wanted to touch on 2 other things briefly. Ross mentioned the place action plans that we're talking about for areas. We have the themed ones such as digital inclusion, environmental, community safety, but also in Forgewood, as you might recall from the previous board meeting, we set up a Forgewood Place action plan, which is progressing really well with a number of North Lanarkshire partners, but with Forgewood Housing Co-op as a community anchor organisation at the heart of that. And there's some issues that have already emerged around play facilities in Forgewood, as you know, around Food Street. But there was a recent event down there with, I think, a few local councillors involved, and it was taken on board about some of the need to look at some of the issues around the play park in Fife Drive. So I'm glad to say we're looking at that as well. So directly speaking with local people, linking it into some of the service providers, I think the place action plans are having a positive effect already. And on that basis, I just wanted to pull Ross back in to maybe talk about the Craig Nuke place action plan, which we're looking at just now. And Ross, could you just give a bit more detail in some of the meetings you've had with some of the NL partners as well and some of the issues up there?
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Peter. As Peter mentioned, we're also just at the starting point of developing a Craig Nuke action plan. You might be aware through publicity, there's been some antisocial behaviour issues in Craig Nuke. And prior to starting any kind of subgrouping involving local residents, the council, along with their partners in the main Police Scotland, but also internal partners from housing services, from pollution control, from the antisocial behaviour task force, have been carrying out specific days of action to target Craig Nuke and to try and make some immediate change in the area. these have been high visibility days of action, and the idea is to drive home the message that we're there to improve Craigneuk and we're working together to improve Craigneuk. It's our intention that alongside these days of action, as we develop the action plan, we're going to directly engage with the community. That'll be both through the community board, but also with residents and local groups that perhaps don't attend this board, but will have a local voice. And we're going to be working closely with them to try and get them involved about shaping the future of Craigneuk, to identify what's important for them and what steps we can take, both as a council, but also to make improvements. As I mentioned, we're working closely with Police Scotland. It's actually worked out quite well tonight, because as much as Craigneuk falls under the Motherwell Community Board, it actually falls under the Wishaw policing area. However, the area inspector for Wishaw is standing in tonight for the Motherwell inspector. So I don't know, Alan, is there anything just at the end you'd like to add on about the work in Craigneuk, about the joined up work, I suppose, we're doing in the action plans?
Ross, I'll go into some of the kind of interventions that we've had from a policing point of view. I think you've covered it really well in relation to the kind of the multi-agency work that's going on, and I think I would just reiterate the impact that the collaboration's having down in Craigneuk. There's something slightly different, and I can't quite put my finger on it, but I think it is really just that focused efforts with our housing officers and the antisocial teams, probably primarily. And then that kind of wider efforts with the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service in relation to some of the dangers down there, with environmental metals being held in gardens, and just some of the kind of community cleanups that's going on alongside it. But certainly I'll come to our kind of piece on what we are actually doing to affect the actual criminal problem. But I think you've covered it really well there. I think all I would say is that the multi-agency approaches are really having quite an impact.
Thanks, Alan. I think that probably rounds up where we're up to with the LOIP chair. Certainly, if anyone's got any questions, they can drop us a line. As we say, we will be starting up the subgroups, and if people are interested in any specific areas, just to remind you what they are, there's community safety and community engagement are sitting together. We have environmental, very appropriate after the Act Now presentation tonight, and we also have digital sitting alongside that, and then we have mental health, and we have poverty and inequality. They'll be sit together as well. So we're only going to look at 3 subgroups covering a couple of things each, and then the one final one that will sit itself is on the town visions and town hubs. So if people have got a specific interest in any of those areas, feel free to get in touch. We'll make sure you're including the subgroups moving forward, and you'll get a chance to shape the future of Motherwell. Thanks, Chair.
Can I just come in the back of that? Sorry, Chair. Just as Ross said, there's a number of you have identified for yourselves for membership of the subgroups, which is fantastic. Still an opportunity if you haven't already. If you could send your names to myself and Ross, that would be great. Get a really good cross selection of local people and local elected members across all the parties. And just one other thing to add to the Craigneuk plan before Chair, we seek approval for the Craigneuk Place Action Plan, is we're considering potentially a participatory budgeting project up in Craigneuk. Still early days, but as you know, there's some fantastic anchor organisations in Craigneuk, and we think now that the work of partners is starting to have an impact up there, that a PB project might be something to take things forward and engage your communities. So sorry for that interruption, Chair. Just wanted to mention that, and yeah, if it's possible to seek approval for that action plan, that'd be great.
Thanks, Peter. So, as Peter said, can we look for the Community Board to approve the Craigneuk Place Action Plan? Thumbs up, thumbs down. Great. Thank you, everyone. Ross, it's you again for the petition around the replacement of the play area at the Loaning.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So there has been a petition submitted regarding the play area at what we call the Loaning in North Motherwell. Now, I do have a report on it, but I think it's usual, Chair, maybe to bring in the petitioner if they want to speak or talk to what the petition was, give us a bit of background on information or anything. And I think we've got, it's Patrick Donnelly, I think it's the lead petitioner who's at the meeting tonight. So I don't know if you want to maybe bring in Patrick first before I do the report.
Absolutely, Patrick.
Hi there. Thanks for inviting me. Yeah, as I say, I've stayed in this area for a number of years, so this play area has, like, over the years, it's served its test of time. But obviously, in the environment I stay in at the minute, I stay local in these flats. So, like, the area in question, obviously, with the building site and that going on round about it, it was just getting worse and worse. And that was the reason for me actually putting in place the petition. And actually, the batting that I had was really, obviously, because of COVID, you couldn't really approach people as much. So, although there was like 56 and like 112, there was a lot more interested in what was actually going on in it. Like local schools, nurseries, stuff like that. So even they, when they used it, they were like, it's about time, like really try and push to get something done there. So it was good to obviously get the backing of Peter and that and find out the help that was there. So it was good.
Great, thanks Patrick. Ross, would you like to add to that?
Yep, so I suppose just in the back of that, Chair, the report in the petition is regarding petition received by North Lanarkshire Council regarding the replacement of an existing play area at a site that we call the Loaning, North Motherwell. And the recommendations of the report, I appreciate the report was circulated quite late on today, so apologies for that. But it's recommended that the board note the content of the petition, which, as Patrick just mentioned there, had 56 signatories online, plus another 112 gathered by local children actually canvassing the local houses. It's recommended the board approve the proposals to support the development of the play area as we've outlined within the report. That includes previously approved LDP contribution of up to £50,000 from the year 2 budgets that are identified just now, and also providing officer support to develop external funding applications to enhance the value of the LDP contribution. And we just asked the board to note that the proposal was already on the holding list and we've previously approved the funding, and we will be using that to obviously lever in as much additional support as we can. That's all, Chair, so that's just commended to the board for approval.
Thanks Ross. Councillor Kelly, did you have something you wanted to add to that?
Just very quickly, just I think I appreciate credit to Patrick, obviously, in the community have got the petition together, and I think it's a really excellent report now to take this forward. And obviously, I think we previously mentioned funding at the last board for it, and also SANEX. Just two play parts quite closely. It's just to make sure that we kind of, as we do, engage with younger people to see what they want. So we've got a broad level of facilities, because they're going to be quite close to each other. But it's a very great thing, and well done to Patrick and the young people who've driven this, and the report today I think is an excellent report to take it forward, so thank you.
I think just on that, oh, sorry Chair, if I'll just quickly respond. Obviously we will carry out full consultation. Councillor Kelly will engage with all of the young people. The intention, however, just now, just so that everyone's very clear, is the play area at Sannox Drive will be aimed at younger children, those that either aren't able to by themselves travel to a bigger play area, or for those at an age where they're requiring an adult with them at all times to play. So for Sannox Drive, we're looking at equipment for 0 to 6, 0 to 8, what we would call the younger age range. We are looking at the Loaning to have a wider age range offering of play facilities there, so covering 0 to 12, 0 to 14, to make it more inclusive of the wider community. And we will be looking at a range of consultation methods, so that if allowed, that will include face-to-face. We will also, however, use Microsoft forums to engage online, both with the community and within the local schools, so that everyone that's interested gets a chance to put their voice forward on the project.
Thanks Ross. Councillor McGowan, did you want to come in?
Sorry, I actually had my name in before Councillor Kelly, but I'm so quiet you didn't notice me. No, I'm going back. I wanted to go back to the local development plan. I put my name in there, but if I've missed a few, but I just wanted to commend the community. Ross talked about the George Street Park, and I wanted to commend the community and all the things they did to encourage the community to be involved in this. Local schools and churches were involved. They ran events at the park. They ran a race day. They ran a tea in the park. They had design events. They surveyed the whole area. to see how people felt about it. So I just wanted to commend the community. And I also want to thank the officers who, I mean, will help in any way. Ross Dunn, Peter McNally and Christina McGreedy, who are an absolutely amazing help. And Peter will work especially hard if at meetings I bring my Malteser cake. So I know how to make Peter work. Is that right, Peter? And thanks very much for helping us with filling in, or helping the community group, the George Street Park group as they're called, and filling in the extended funding grant forums. But I've got to thank the officers very much. Thank you. And we're looking forward to it.
Thanks, Councillor McGreedy. Thanks, Councillor McGowan. Sorry, everyone. So can we look to the board then to get an approval to take the project of the play area at the Loaning forward in principle? I think we're all thumbs up for that one. That's great. Thank you, everyone. All right. Moving on then to the next agenda item, which is community matters. So we're looking for input from local community groups with any agenda items. So where will I go first? Aisha, can I come to you first to see if you've got anything?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's just to let everyone know that I'm the founder of the Health and Wellness Hub. We're based in Albert Street in Motherwell, and we're pleased to say that a lot of our activity is now starting back. So we've got our classes, and we've got some new classes, Zumba and yoga classes, as well as our Tai Chi classes. So all face-to-face, but we're also doing a blended approach. So for anyone that wants to take part, we're still doing the Zoom options as well. Our short mobility service in Coatbridge and Motherwell is still running, albeit we're now funding that ourselves. We're looking at different income streams to try and support us with that, but the short mobility service is still running. And we've also still got our befriending service. So again, with the befriending service, it's telephone, but we're also able to do some face-to-face befriending, and we're hoping that there'll be some peer support groups are set up on the back of that as well. Our therapies in our centre are still running, and we're pleased to say that our community hubs will be starting back in September too, as the community centres open. So lots of activity. If you want any more information, just go on our website, the Health and Wellness Hub, or follow us on Facebook, and you'll get kept up to date with what's going on. Thanks.
That's great. Thanks, Aisha. Michelle, I was coming to you next anyway.
Thank you, Chair. I'm speaking on behalf of a local group that's contacted me. I'm the chair of the North Lanarkshire Home Visit and Befriending Network, and it's been brought to my attention about the seating in Motherwell, particularly seating that was removed in the shopping centre. Some older people are struggling when they're going to the shops. They can't manage the full length of it. Even if you go half of it, you've got the half to go back. So it's just really to see if there's any update and if these seats will be put back in, because it's affecting people with their isolation, their mental health, their confidence with walking, because they want to go out and walk, but they're just struggling with nowhere to sit down outside in the shopping centre. So it's just to see if there's any update for that, please.
Peter, can you comment on that?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, Michelle and I had a chat about this previously. It's a really good point. I think one of the issues we need to clarify from the council's point of view is ownership, because it is town centre, and we can do that through our colleagues in other departments with regard to who the best contact is from the town centre owners to actually try and progress this, because it's an issue that's been ongoing, I think, now for a few months. Michelle, you've raised it before. So yeah, we'll certainly take that forward and come back with a response.
Thank you, Peter.
Thanks, Peter. I'm looking down the list to see who else is from a community group that might want to comment. Anyone else from any other community groups would like to provide us an update or a wee comment?
Fiona, there are a couple I had just sent over to you that were specifically requested to be put on the agenda from John Kellehan, and we've Aisha's spoken, and I think Councillor O'Rourke.
Let's go with John. John, did you want to comment on the grass cutting?
Chair, I can't actually see if John's in the meeting.
That's, I was just going to say, I don't think he's
May
with
not be.
us. Okay. And the Spanish War Memorial CCTV coverage from Councillor O'Rourke, I think we've already spoken about. Councillor O'Rourke, did you have anything else you wanted to add to that?
No, that was it, Fiona, thank you.
Okay, thanks. So Aisha, yours is the next one, and it's on financial support available for installation of interconnected fire alarms when legal obligations are introduced by the Scottish Government.
Yeah, I think it's just to get some advice on this. We will all be aware of the legal obligations by the Scottish Government in 2022 for the fire alarms to be installed in people's homes. But my worry is that those that can't afford that, I'd just like to ask the question if there's going to be some financial assistance given on that.
Thanks, Aisha. Ross or Peter? Or
I think, Chair, I would like
Fire
to immediately defer that to Des, please, and bring him in. I'm not sure if that.
Thank you, Chair. My retort is to bounce it straight back. No, I have not at all. Forgive me, the light's fading. I'm just going to put my light on because so I wasn't really armed with this. So thanks, Aisha, for raising this one. But it's quite an important point, I guess, in that there's new legislation introduced in January 2019 to ensure that everybody in Scotland has the same level of protection within their homes. Due to the pandemic, they deferred the timings for that to allow a 12-month grace period, taking you to February 2022. Essentially, this is legislation. This is Scottish Government legislation that's come in, and it's enforceable by the local authority. So one of the things I suppose for me is it's not Scottish Fire and Rescue Service. We won't enforce the legislation. That will be the local authority. However, the guidance from the Scottish Government regarding that is that they'll work with people. They're expecting that local authorities will understand the needs of the local communities. And although they're looking to set that minimum standard, any intervention and prosecutions, if you like, would be proportionate. So, Aisha, it is legislation. The timings are from now till February 22, and it will be the local authority that would enforce that. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but I'm happy to come back in.
Yeah, I just think the nature of the people that we work with are, the majority of people live in poverty, and these are the ones that are probably most vulnerable and would be protected by this piece of legislation. My worry is that people, even with a deadline of February, still can't afford to get the systems in place. So it's just about raising it, and I would appreciate it if there was some sort of conversation could be had about how we support those that are financially struggling. I know through the North Lanarkshire Council Financial Insecurity Fund, as one of the anchor organisations for AIRG and Motherwell, we supported the distribution of funds. So there may be an option via something like this that we could do if we are identifying families that may be struggling to meet the cost of this, that we could maybe do something from third sector perspective. Just a suggestion, but I'd quite like to continue the conversations and see if there's anything that we can do so that people are not faced with that decision.
Chair, I think it might be worth if we just take a wee action note to add that to an agenda for a community safety subgroup meeting, and that's maybe something that a subgroup can pick up and then maybe discuss with relevant council officers what potential routes forward there might be, Aisha.
Great, thanks, Ross.
Fiona, Stevie Wright's also here, and he's got his hand raised just in case you can't see it. He was.
I can't. Thanks for letting me know, Stevie. Do you have something to add?
Hi, Chair, and thanks, Leanne. Yeah, I suppose just to kind of follow up for what Des was saying there, I think it is probably worthwhile taking this discussion
Stephen, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you're really breaking up and I can't particularly hear you very well. I don't know if anyone else is having the same issues.
For a wee bit of
No, Stephen, I think we've lost you. Oh. No.
Chair, sometimes if he takes his camera off, it might increase, it might give him a better signal for so we can hear it better.
Does that make any better?
If we could give that a go, that would be good.
Yeah, I'll get that. I'll discuss with Des and we can feedback from the.
All right, thanks, Stephen. Maybe we'll get you back later. I think that was the last few specific items on the community groups sort of agenda. I know we've got a couple of other people from some other community groups that I would be keen to hear from. Elle from Hook Scotland, are you still with us? Elle, can you hear us? Maybe not. So we'll go to Nan. Do you have anything you wanted to update us with from Community Council perspective? No, I think everyone's having connection problems today. Well, I'll go with my updates from a community and voluntary sector update. As you know, I work for two local community groups, Community Action Newt Hill and Full On. Both of them, we are starting back in-person activities the second week in September, or from the 7th of September. So that's good news for us to get back in touch with our people in local communities. I'm sure you'll have seen the flyers with our dates and times for all the activities. If you're interested in either Community Action Newt Hill or Full On, just get in touch with me and I will share the flyers with the times and dates with everyone. That's the quick update. I think Elle's come back to us to say she's having issues, it's breaking up badly. Elle, I don't know if you want to try again. Can you hear us yet? Or do you want to drop off and back in? We can always come back to you. We can always come back to Elle if you can hear us at some point. All right, so the next agenda item is input from community planning partners. Peter, is that you? Or is it Ross, maybe?
Chair, that'll be, that's our colleagues from police, fire and NHS.
All right. Des, that's good timing. Any update from you?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll just pick up what I was on the phone there. Stevie Wright gave me a phone. So Stevie Wright is the local senior officer for Lanarkshire area, and he's committed to taking this up at the senior leadership board, which he sits on, to see where funding would come from for private landlords. So again, that's just a commitment from him there. In terms of my update, I have provided a paper and it's there for you to view. It's essentially quarter one. I've given some stats for the last 3 years to allow for some benchmarking there, and I've also provided the other two community boards which I also represent, which is Shotts and Wishaw. That information allows you to look and see where activity levels are and do that, you know, looking to see what ward areas are taking up some of our activity. And I'm just looking at the list here. So in terms of operational activity, you can see deliberate fire setting is one of the highest and most resource intensive. There's also a real link there to antisocial behaviour, and that will link on to something that Ross and Peter have already spoken about in some of those areas. Also, our unwanted fire alarm signals. You may be aware that we've currently got a consultation out as to how we will respond to unwanted fire alarm signals. And we are looking to change that model. So essentially, some of the options are to not attend at all. The options would be to send a reduced attendance, and indeed to only send when it's a confirmed fire. The benefits of not going to unwanted fire alarm signals are less blue light journeys, which is safer for firefighters and safer for the public on the roads. And it draws resources away from other necessary activities when we're going to these unwanted fire alarms. And we're really looking to do far more preventative activity now and looking to free up capacity on that. Some of the recent prevention and engagement activity has been around two of the areas that have been mentioned. So Craigneuk and Forgewood. It's been great, and thank you to the partners for inviting us along, and we've come along and participated in some of the litter picks, the community cleanups and other activities. One of the other ones that it would be remiss of me not to mention is that the safety awareness training that we've been given following some of the tragic water events in Lanarkshire and beyond. So we have been visiting schools, summer clubs, youth clubs, attending street soccer, and any opportunity we can to speak to youths and young people about the dangers of water. And whether that's signposting to other services or just getting the message across about water safety, that's something that we are doing and will continue to do given recent events and helping people understand the dangers of water. Chair, the report is there for all to see, so I'll not go through it, but I'm happy to take any questions or comments on that or any other issues. Thank you.
Thanks, Des. I've got one actually that I had asked to be added to the agenda, but I think I missed a cut off for it, and it was kind of related to the unwanted alarms that you talked about. So I live across from Keirhardie Memorial Primary in Ure Hill, and a couple of weeks ago the alarm was going for 3 days. And it grates on your nerves after 3 days. And when we did report it to the police, and eventually the fire brigade did attend, it obviously wasn't a real fire, but the alarm was just tripped for some reason, but there was no listed key holder or emergency contact person listed, so the alarm just kept going until someone randomly got a hold of the head teacher or someone to turn it off. So the agenda item I had asked to be added was, could that be looked at to make sure that for any North Lanarkshire Council properties that there is a up-to-date relevant key holder listed, which would probably have negated that whole thing for 3 days, and it would have been turned off the first day, and the fire brigade wouldn't have had to come out and, you know, spend time sending a fire engine to something that was a real fire.
Chair, yeah, that's a good point. It's not one I'm familiar with, but there's a couple of points just to pick up on. Is that the fires in schools have seen a real increase over the last couple of years, particularly through holiday periods, and given the nature generally of a school building, they tend to be older, which encourages fire spread through hidden voids and other places. Can I firstly recommend that if anyone ever hears a fire alarm going, that they phone the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service on 999 immediately, and that allows us to deal with it. One of the other points you raised there is about key holders. So in terms of an unwanted fire alarm signal, we will attend, and where we reasonably believe that there is fire within, we will gain access to that premises under our legislation, but only where we have, you know, we can see flame or we can see smoke, or we reasonably believe. If there isn't any sign of fire or smoke, then we would just do a 360-degree check of the building, looking through windows, doors, looking for signs of fire and smoke. And if we don't see any, we would leave. Obviously, before that, we would try and get a key holder, as you mentioned. So I can definitely, the other point then is I will definitely take forward the key holder list and ensure that our fire safety enforcement team work with the local authority, and we have that list available for our control room. I hope that covers your points, Chair.
It does. Thank you, Des. Pamela, I think you've got an update as well on this particular point.
Yeah, I did try. I looked into this. I think when the point was raised. So the process that is in place in terms of from the council's point of view is that these matters would get reported to the council's contact centre, and the contact centre do have the list of key holders for for any instance like that. So as far as they could establish that, I think the last activation was in July. So I don't think that's the one that you're specifically referring to. So it doesn't sound as if that this, if it was the fire alarm, that there was any contact made with the contact centre. But the process should be that anything like that activations that the contact should be made with the council's contact centre in terms of the peers, and that they've got the list of key holders that they would then make the appropriate arrangements. So obviously something has broken down in this particular instance, but that's the process that should be in place.
Great, thanks, Pamela. All right, well, fingers crossed it doesn't happen again, and I'll be able to open my windows and not hear it next time that happens. Thanks, everyone. Where are we? There we go. So, Inspector Mulholland, do you have any update from a police perspective?
Hi folks, yeah. So firstly, I suppose just to introduce myself, my name is Alan Mulholland, and I've obviously been at Wishaw now for about 3 months, and I felt it was a good idea for me to come and actually introduce myself to people. I've obviously met online or via email with all of our elected members and many of the kind of office bearers on the call. So please, it's actually interesting times, isn't it? I'm coming to you out of uniform tonight as well. The pleasures of home working, which is unusual. But so apologies for that if there was an expectation for me to be in uniform, but I was taking my daughter out for dinner for her birthday. So moving on kind of from where we are in Craigneuk, I suppose I'll go into that because that's probably I'm better kind of speaking off the cuff on that. Graham McLaughlin, who's the area inspector for Motherwell, Hill, he's given me an update in relation to kind of various areas within Motherwell. So starting with Forgewood, there's obviously a plan on the go, much like the plan we have in Craigneuk and Forgewood, where there's kind of multi-agency working, and it, Des quite rightly pointed out some of the issues with fire setting, and I know that certainly environmental have been on hand in housing in relation to community cleanups. So we had seen an increase in fires there, and we fully expect that to diminish now that the community cleanups have happened. There is some work ongoing. I think that is the work with the fire service along with their community campus officers, where we'll do some education work within the local schools and kind of wider afoot probably throughout Lanarkshire actually in relation to that particular one, because we did see an increase in fires, particularly in school buildings or open ground generally over the school holidays period. So again, we would hope to see that reduction, just given that the schools are now back in, buildings are now occupied again, and we'll just continue to monitor that. We're looking to kind of deploy the street soccer arenas up in Forgewood, just through our local authority liaison and the wider partnerships there, and hopefully we can get that buy-in and get the soccer arena sorted. The fly tipping again, which is the kind of precursor for some of the fire threatening, we're working with the CCTV camera operators and we're trying to kind of get early doors information in relation to anybody who's kind of appears to be acting suspiciously, and just use the CCTV as well for any identification purposes. Moving on to Muirhouse, and please feel free to, if anybody's got any particular question on any one of these, feel free to ask me, and if I can't answer it, I'll certainly note it down and get an answer back to people. But Muirhouse, so violence and substance misuse is an issue in that area. It's an issue that we've been particularly focused upon over the last kind of month or so, and there's been a number of search warrants under the Misuse of Drugs Act within the kind of area, especially the towers. So that will continue over the kind of coming months as and when intelligence comes in to allow us that facility to obtain warrants, and we'll just continue to kind of focus on that. Unfortunately, with drugs misuse and alcohol misuse, we often see pretty violent acts, as we've seen over the weekend, actually, where we've had a number of serious assaults. But again, we'll continue to kind of pick up on any issues as they arise. We'll continue to link in with the housing officers, antisocial investigators, and try and carry out preventative work round about that. What I would say is in the towers we had a number of housebreakings reported to us. Now I'm glad to report that there was a number of persons charged for housebreaking over the past 3 months. It was quite a good result in relation to our drugs and alcohol violence reduction unit, who have taken housebreakings on in the area as a priority for Police Scotland. So that's been quite good to see. And again, with getting into people's houses and people being arrested for housebreakings, we're getting property back, and we'll continue to clean that important intelligence. Down to Barnshaw and the Duchess Parks, again, you know, both areas of note. In fact, Barnshaw was in Elmhurst, I believe, was in the papers yesterday in relation to the lane closures, and I can't really speak much about that. I don't know if one of the councillors might have something to add, but certainly from Elmhurst into kind of Barnshaw estate up into Carbarns has been an issue over the years. Again, I'm glad to say that myself and Graham have been working together on this one, and we've put kind of intervention tactics at play just on Friday evenings at local off licences. We're getting plainclothes patrols to go and patrol them, catch anybody who's selling alcohol or going in and buying alcohol for young people who then have got that pull to go down to the kind of Clyde walkways, etc. We're deploying the motorbikes, so it's the council funded motorbikes down in that area, because it's a really good resource for us to use for antisocial behaviour, particularly with young people. We've started the parental alert letters again to make sure parents have been informed of their children being left in that area. Much of the time, actually, they've been taken there by their parents, would you believe, and dropped off to go into lanes to do whatever they want. So you'll see that we've been doing quite heavy publicity around about that. There's been a lot on Facebook and across the board within the Wishy Press, and Motherwell paper's not particularly picking up on things, but we're trying to work more with the papers to make sure that the message is being passed. And I see that there was a piece in from the local councillor up at the Carbarns end recently, which really helps the matter. Actually, I would really encourage councillors, really, when you're doing the kind of press pieces, you know, to be in touch with us, and we kind of can work together in relation to comments around about what we're actually doing about the matter. It's really worked well with us engaging with the councillors, because people see again that we're working together. So the Spanish Civil War memorial, so it was damaged on 2 occasions. I've got the update here that there's been no persons charged in relation to that, and again, it's due to the location and the lack of CCTV. So I suppose, again, following on from some of the proposals made tonight, it's welcomed that we're going to see some changes in the park in relation to CCTV. That would certainly give us some really good visual footage for us to work with for people going in and out the park. I'll move on to Craig Nuke now. Is there aimed to get any questions about the areas that I've covered?
Yeah, I think Councillor McGowan had a few comments.
And I just wanted to comment on Barnshaw. It's in my ward, and I think the police have done an amazing job there. I was speaking to a resident just the other day, because I hadn't heard the same amount of complaints from residents, and the situation seems to have greatly improved over the summer. It started in about January, the serious antisocial behaviour and the number of young people going down Barnshaw. But over the summer and all the good weather, it seems to have improved, and I think that is due to the police, the very sensible input in the way they deal with it, and the very complex action plans that they put into place at weekends. And I would just like to thank the police for their input in this. And at present, improving the situation. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor McGowan. Alison, did you want to come in on that as well?
Yes, I'm involved in the local RSPB group and we work locally with the reserve staff. And just to add, in addition to the police presence there, the RSPB themselves have been funding. Unfortunately, the warden is currently away, so I haven't had a completely up-to-date update from him. The RSPB have been funding security patrols once during the evening from Monday to Thursday, and sorry, from Sunday to Thursday, I think it was, and twice during the evening and sort of up until midnight on Friday night and Saturday night, so that the security that they have, installed has obviously been liaising closely with the police, and I think the two together have made a tremendous difference to that.
Great, that's good to hear. Thanks, Alison. Inspector Mulholland, did you want to continue with the rest of your update?
So I see Ross has obviously commented there. That's great. Just to highlight that the soccer arena will be in Marmion Crescent, Forgewood, starting from the 17th of September, from 7 till 9 o'clock for 9 to 16-year-olds, which is excellent. Thanks for that update, Ross. Yeah, so moving on really just to Craigneuk, which is to be honest, the focus of most of my efforts just now, along with Ross and actually, various partners around the table. We've had quite a significant response in relation to incidents where there's been discharge of firearms, which is quite a significant event, and I think we should really give it the focus it's due, because so often we've had issues, and that systemic issue of violence and disorder down in the Craigneuk area. And I think I just want to give the board my personal commitment on this. I've worked in Lanarkshire all my service, or having been away for 5 years in between times, and coming back to Lanarkshire, I have to say that I did notice a difference in Craigneuk. So I think we need to be open to the fact that some great work has been going on. However, it hasn't got rid of that, some of the control and that settling that goes on down in Craigneuk. And again, working with the housing officers, we've been identifying families of note, individuals of note. So, without getting into any names, obviously, but it's important for the board to know that we are actually working together on this, sharing intelligence and information. We're working with all the local community groups who are open to give us information as and when required. And probably most importantly, we carried out a Crime Stoppers campaign last week, which actually had quite a significant impact on the people that we spoke to down there, where actually they thought we just didn't care. And I think it's really sad in this day and age that we've still got people who maybe feel that way. However, so part and parcel of this was the day of action, which we did, and Ross gave a very good update on that. It had a really good response. I think there was around 9. In fact, I'll go into the actual outcome of the day of action. There was around 9 abandonment notices, and there was 2 known persons to us who are causing quite a lot of grief in the area, who were evicted from properties. And it kind of became alive to us that actually people were moving into properties and kicking other people out. So actually we were coming across people in houses who didn't even have any sort of right to be there. So again, really significant move forward in the steps that were taken down there, working together with housing, because they very much have got a much better remit than us. The criminal element just doesn't seem to work with them. So using the housing kind of legislation, it is a very good move forward. From that, we've then looked to target bail conditions in relation to particular nominals, and we've managed to get them out of the area. So again, a significant move for the area to allow the residents that time to focus on, actually where they live, and again, give them that breathing space to actually speak to the police either confidently or speak to the police officers as they're down and out and about. We have 4 officers per day, 2 in a day shift and 4 back shift, 4 night shift, along with other patrols in the area. So a significant police response down there, and it will continue for the foreseeable future until such times as we feel as if it's it's much safer for people to go about their business. But on the day of action, again, much like Forgewood, there was community cleanups because we've seen a lot of fire setting down there, so a lot of waste was taken away. We've again used our legislation under the Misuse of Drugs Act to obtain warrants, and I think there's been around 7 warrants performed down in that area for known people who are dealing drugs, and we've again taken them out of the equation for now. And the police motorcycles again, and I'll keep mentioning them actually because they're a great resource for us. They've been down and out and about in the area, providing that kind of much needed reassurance around about quad bikes and motorbikes being used. I think there was a motorbike used in one of the incidents down there. And again, it shows that we have got we've got the tools required to go down and affect the issues in hand. Moving forward, I think, again, it's important the work that was proposed earlier on by Ross and others in relation to the kind of community cohesion in the area. We're really keen to work with local people to see what you think that we should be doing from a policing point of view. So again, that will be part and parcel of the work moving forward. We will introduce Cuppa with a Copper, or if somebody's got a better name for it, I'd be open to that. Down in the Venny or one of the community centre down there, just to basically put a face to the names of the local community officers. Unfortunately, we've got 2 community officers that deal with Craigneuk, the whole of Craigneuk, which is quite a big area for 2 officers to take on their own, but they do a good job down there. I'd like to give the community that kind of that facility to be able to just meet with them. Down in the Craigneuk area, we've got the hospital just across the road. So just again, an update for the group. I've started a professionals meeting with the hospital, where we've agreed certain policies around about missing people and whatever. It doesn't really come into the wider community, but what you do see in the wider community is maybe people with mental health conditions who are maybe made off the hospital. So we're looking to kind of tighten up on some of the kind of safety aspects of the hospital. We're working with the board just now across Lanarkshire to introduce a new missing person policy, and just will continue to highlight any issues arising and vice versa, any issues arising that the board is required to know about from people coming to and from the hospital. It's probably worthy of note again that the hospital has seen a massive increase in the amount of patients attending. So I think that the emergency department are actually receiving in around 240 patients a day, which is over 100 more than they're set up to deal with. So again, that's going to have an impact on violence disorder within waiting rooms. And again, we're responding to that as and when required. And I think the only other thing, sorry, not to harp on, I'm trying to give you this as brief as I can, but we have initiated an operation called Operation Ferris. It was in response to some of the doorstep crime incidents that we've seen across the board. And we know that doorstep criminals use vehicles. So we've teamed up with DVSA, the Driver and Vehicle Standards Agency, along with trading standards as well, be it trading standards haven't really got much to do just now because of the way we're operating these particular operations, but they're essentially road stops. So across the piece, certainly throughout Wishaw and Craigneuk gets attention every time we do them. There's been something like 365 vehicles stopped over 3 separate days of action. From that, we've got a driver who was under the influence of cannabis. He was arrested. We've arrested nominals on warrant and various road traffic offences, whereby we've taken vehicles off the road, and DVSA have issued 23 prohibition notices again for dangerous and faulty vehicles. So again, you might think that, well, that's a traffic issue, but actually no, it's not. It's a really important way for us to glean intelligence from who's using the road networks, who's out and about in Craigneuk and various the main arterial routes through Craigneuk, and actually provides us with a really nice intelligence picture. So listen, not to go on any further, but look, I'll continue to do what we're doing. You'll see we've been doing lots and lots of press work, and I see that there's various people offering to be part and parcel of that press work, and I'll get in touch with you personally. I'm really keen to continue that. Again, if we're going to be doing these things, I think the community really need to know about it. and as I say, I'll continue to kind of engage with the press as and when required. So that's me, Chair, for my update. If anybody's got any questions, happy to take them.
I think Margaret Ann was asking, is it possible to have that information about all the successes that you've been talking about recently in some kind of report or something that can be shared with the community that maybe aren't here at this meeting to show them the progress that's been made?
Absolutely, and it's interesting. I note that we don't provide you with a written report, probably because there's so much going on, and actually we just need to be careful in relation to figures. But what I do, and I think my commitment to the local people, is that we will continue to put everything we do, and you'll see on Facebook pages and to the local press. So we go to all the local outlets and we try and get everything that we're doing put out there. Therefore, it's easily accessible to the community. I think that's a much better way to do that. I'm happy to send the press detail to the community board or look at a report. It's just trying to sometimes find that space to be able to produce a report that's of benefit to the board. So again, I'm open to suggestions. If you want a report, I can certainly look at that. If you're happy that we continue to put all that we're doing out to the press and it's seen there, again, we're happy to do that also.
All right, thank you very much. I'm just kind of conscious of the time. Anita, I'm going to come to you to see if you've got any update from an NHS perspective, just quickly.
Just quickly now, to encourage people to take their COVID, both injections, and also sadly it's flu season is coming up very soon. So there'll be information about that coming out quite soon. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Anita. That was super quick. All right, just moving on then to the next agenda item. Any other business from anyone? We have just under 10 minutes. Nothing at all? Last chance.
Chair, can I just come in very quickly?
Yep.
Not that I want to hold anyone back because I've had my dinner either. Just really to update you, the board will be aware we put out a call around community groups looking for ideas for potential community benefits projects relating to the contracts for Motherwell Station. It's just to give you an update that the tender's not been awarded yet. The service that are looking after that are expecting to award a tender by the end of September, and we'll be able to further update on that. However, just now it's looking very positive that we only received 5 submissions, or we received 5, that's really good, but it looks like we'll be able to deliver all 5 of those community benefit submissions, but we can only fully confirm that following tender award. So it's just if anyone's waiting on the outcome of that, so that we're up to date. And we fully intend to run a similar process with future larger scale procurement contracts to ensure community benefits are getting delivered actually in the heart of the communities.
Okay, thanks, Ross. Councillor McGowan?
Very quick. Just like information on when the LOIP subgroups are going to start to meet. I'm in the environment one, and I'm looking forward to thinking how we can develop the green spaces in North Lanarkshire even further for the health and well-being of the community. So I just wanted to know when they're going to start meeting.
I can let you know, Councillor McGowan, we had delayed starting them because we were looking to get the actual LOIP document published so that we had that overarching document. We do have all the master plans, or sorry, the action plans prepared, and we'll be looking to start sending out invites for the subgroups over the next few weeks to start scheduling them. We'll help facilitate the first subgroups, and then we'll be handing it over to whoever that identified lead is for each of the subgroup to take them forward. The groups will be able to meet as regularly or as frequently as they feel required, and the specific subgroups around the town hubs and community hubs, we won't convene a meeting for that until when the Collins reports went to the Policy and Strategy Committee, so that we're fully aware of the position and we can then take it forward from there. But for the environment one, convening them over the next couple of weeks.
Thanks, Ross. Anything else from anyone? Nope. That's great. Well, thanks everyone. We're 5 minutes early. It's better than nothing. Thanks for taking part tonight, everyone. our next meeting is scheduled for Thursday the 2nd of December at 6:30 again. So I'm sure you'll get the invite to that in due course, and we'll see you then.
Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Chair.
Thanks, Fiona. Well chaired.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.